Hi guys, welcome to ESU from the Workbench. I'm Matt Herman, General Manager of ESU, and I want to go over just a guided tour today of the LokProgrammer software itself. We'll just not going to get into the how-to so much today, just a tour so you know where to find things. And then we'll get into the how-tos as our video series continues. So the first thing that we're going to do is just open our LokProgrammer software. Now you can just simply double-click on it on your desktop or wherever you have it stored. And it'll open up to the screen that you see here. The first thing that's going to come up is this the startup wizard. It's going to ask you, do you want to modify the settings of the decoder? Do you want to perform a complete sound update or decoder update? Do you want to create a new project or open one? This is just how do you get started. This is the first things that you're going to do almost always when you open up the software. So that's what this box does. For our purposes today, we're not going to do any of this. I've already kind of bypass this in our class, so let's go ahead and close that out. The next thing we want to look at, maybe even the first thing we want to look at, is what LokProgrammer version are we using. In most cases, and I would venture to say almost all cases, we want to be sure that we're using the most recent version of the software that's available. As of today's date, it's September 23rd, 2015, and the most recent version is the 4.4.20. But in case you're not sure, you want to go up to the Help menu and just simply check on or click on Check for New Version. And as it comes up here, we have no new versions available. If there was a new version available, another box is going to come over and it's going to say that the next version is now available. Click here to download and just follow the instructions when that happens. And maybe later on I'll do a quick video on that, but it's really simple. So you just follow the instructions. It should be easy for most everyone. So the next step is just kind of look around and get familiar with the icons and what you're seeing on the screen. Now, I don't have a sound file open right now. I didn't open anything up yet. So the only thing that we're seeing is the drivers tab icon and the read and write CVs tab. So typically what's going to open first is this read and write CVs tab as a default if there's not a file open. And what that's going to show you is if you want to do exactly what it says, read a CV or write a CV in here. We can change the different bits. If you want to use our index CVs, which ESU decoders have, we want to be able to set those at different times. So this will allow you to do that just on the CV side. Now, if you're using a LokProgrammer, in most cases, you probably aren't going to be just writing CVs in most cases. You're going to be going to the drop-down menus, which we'll show you here in just a few minutes. But this does give you the option to do it just by CVs. Now, as a little bit of a hint or a tip, I've had some experience in writing CVs to other decoders. You can do that here, but you can only write. You're not going to be able to read, at least in my experience. So it is possible in some cases. I wouldn't necessarily say that, yes, this is going to work for everything. If you have a way to write individual CVs with a command station to other brands of decoders, that's probably the best route for you. But again, I've had a little bit of experience in having the ability to write CVs here. So regardless, going forward, you're going to be able to have some decoder information. Once in a while, if you have a little bit of a question as to what firmware version is in there or the product ID, the manufacturer, you can read the decoder information and that info will come up here. I actually don't have a decoder on the programming track right now. Turn around looking behind me. But unfortunately, I don't have anything to read. But if you need that information, maybe you have a problem or a question with the decoder and you call in for help, sometimes we'll ask for the extended decoder information. This will give you that area or that information in this area. So as we go into the drivers tab, this allows you to run and operate and test a decoder once it's been written. So whether it be in the engine or if you have it plugged into the ESU decoder tester, you can use this as a virtual command station. It's not a true command station. It's not going to be able to do everything that your command station can do, but you can turn it on. You can run it to test all your function buttons, turn your lights on and off. You can change the protocol to 14 through 128 speed steps in DCC, or you can change it over to Motorola. You can put your address in here of the engine that you're running so that you can make sure you're talking to the right engine. If you don't know your address, you can press this little icon over here with a magnifying glass. That'll actually go out and read the engine on the programming track, find the address for you, and insert it into the address bar. So good little tips. I found that typically when the arrow is pointing to the right, that's your forward direction. When the arrow is pointing to your left, that's your reverse direction. And you can increase or decrease by using the arrows here, or just by grabbing the sliders and moving it up and down. Now, the one thing that I found that this does not do, it does not allow you to have these as momentary buttons. So even if you're getting into the Railcom protocol and we set up a momentary button so that Railcom recognizes it as a momentary button, which our command station and most Railcom command stations will allow you to do with our decoders, kind of a cool feature. This will only be a latching button. So just be aware of that as you're doing your testing. So the other thing you can do with this is if you're setting up switch pilots or turnout control panels, you can also control those from the screen on the driver's cab. So lots and lots of ability here. So those are the things that just come up without having any decoder programmed or any software or sound file loaded into the software as we're moving along. So the next step is to go ahead and I'm going to open up a file that I've had open here today. We're going to start with a LokSound select file because I'm in North America and that's what we sell the most of over here. So, most of our market is using the LokSound selects. That's what's being used in a lot of the manufacturers' engines here. So a lot of people watching our videos are probably going to be using the selects. So when you open up a select, this is what you're going to see. Now you still have your driver's cab, you still have your read and write CVs and information and all that. None of that's changed. But now you have two more menus. The one that's going to be used the most is the decoder menu. We'll come right back to that. The next one is the information panel. Now in the information side, this is really good to set up if you're a custom builder or a custom sound installer. You can come into here and you can write exactly what each function button is doing. If you're working with somebody that has a Railcom command station, you can set up the icons in the Railcom to be whatever you want on that function button. You can, again, here's where we set up whether they're a momentary button or not. Every function button on an ESU decoder can be momentary or latching. You can handle that right in here, and if you have a Railcom equipped command station, it'll recognize that, and every button on the command station will be momentary or latching based on what the sound file is. So that's not as a general rule, that's exactly what the sound file is telling you want to be for that engine. We set up some whether you want that button to be inverted or not, or category. You can set that all up here so that you can do a printout later. You could go up to Tools and save a bulletin. And when that happens, you can give it a name, go to, set it up as English. Typically, that's what we're going to be, so that's why the default is there. You could also do German. Save that. It's going to go to wherever you told it to save it at. And I'll go back and do that again so you can see it. You can pick. Here I've got it in, my finished and uploaded folder. Here it is. I can actually, resave it, no problem. If I were to open that up, that's going to give me some information on a printout that I can give to a customer then. Or I can print that out for my own uses, file it away, come back to it later if I need it. So it's kind of a handy tool. The other available option and under the information page is the general information, and here I can give that engine a name. I can put an icon, or I can put a picture in here. This again will be printed on the bulletin if I print one. I can choose whether it's a steam or a diesel, maybe it's a miscellaneous. We do have a sound file for a horse and buggy, so that would be under the miscellaneous, I believe. You can put a description in there. I like to put in, when I create the select files, I create what the CV48 will do and the different horns. So I put all that information here so that when we print bulletins out later on, that information is there and can be easily found. You can put different version numbers or project numbers, whatever you want to do for your customers or for your own uses. So very handy to be able to get the information out there so that you know how to find it later on. Now, back to the decoder tab. Now, this is where most of the information is. And I honestly am going to go through this pretty quickly. There's a lot of information here, but I don't want to keep this video so long that it gets boring and kind of lose track of where we are. So I'll probably come back to each of these tabs and do more videos on them and get into in depth on how to do things with them. But for right now, I just want to show you how to find things. So the first one at the very top is your address tab. So under locomotive address, you can use a short address or a long address. These short addresses are 1 to 127. A long address under DCC is 128 up to 9,999. So you can put those numbers in here. Now, just as a warning, if you put in a long address and you have this radio button checked, it's not going to allow you to put the full long digit address in there. So if I just put 1111, which is a 4-digit long address, and I press return, it's automatically going to go back to 127 because that's the highest short address that you can put in, and that's a DCC thing, not an ESU thing. So just be aware of that. If you want to use a long address, click the radio button first, and then you can put in whatever you would like for a long address, and that'll remain. So DCC and consist address, this is for CV19 advanced consisting. If you want a special consist address for that, you can put that in here. If you want certain buttons to be working under that consist address in advanced consisting mode, you can choose which buttons are active under the functions in consist mode menu. The next step, again, I'm going to be moving pretty quickly, so try to keep up or press pause and replay if you need to. Analog settings. So these are the settings that, as all of our decoders are dual mode, if you would take this to an analog layout, a DC layout, or in some cases, if you're using a 4.0 or MFX, maybe an AC layout, you want things to work in the analog mode, you can show what function buttons, and we'll get into the function mapping to show how to set those function buttons up here just a second. But you can choose which function buttons you want to be active while in that analog mode here. So in this case, we want the lights to be on and we want the sound to be on, because in selects, F8 turns the sound on and off as our defaults, all changeable. We'll show that in our function mapping video. We want to be able to enable the analog DC mode. You can turn that on and off here. A lot of times, different command stations, they like to be able to turn off the DC mode. They tend to get better operation. So here's where you would do that under the menus. You can adjust your start voltage and your maximum speed voltage in analog use. So that's all here. Your analog voltage is stereo. You have the motor. The motor will stop when the voltage falls below the certain voltage that you pick here. So, and then there's function difference voltage. A lot of times, if you're doing a lot of analog running, you're going to get into some of this. But if you're really not using analog modes, if you're going to be running in DCC, not probably a menu you're really going to be changing much of. I have a big layout at home. I don't. Other than doing a little bit of testing or setting up a file for someone, I never get into the analog stuff. But there are people out there that like DCC and sound, but use it on an analog layout. So this just gives you some options to make that run better, because analog wasn't designed for DCC. So we've had to put stuff in DCC to help it work better on the analog. So compatibility. This is more for certain command stations. If you're using Zemo, or if you're using the LGB stuff, this just gives you some abilities here. Going under the DCC settings, here's where you would turn Railcom on and off. The ESU decoders will detect the speed step of your command station automatically if you have this checked, or if you want to specifically make it either 14 speed steps or 28 or 128, you can manually set that here and force it to be one or the other. Typically, our default files are set so that it's going to automatically detect it. That way, there's really not much you have to do to it. Driving characteristics, pretty self-explanatory. Your acceleration or your deceleration, just basically how quickly, if you turn the throttle to full speed, how long is it going to take from a complete stop to full speed? And looking at this file as it's set up, it's going to take 20 seconds to do that. And same thing going down, 20 seconds to go from full speed to a stop. Completely adjustable. CV3, CV4. You know, if you're familiar with DCC and setting up some of this, you'll see that this is how you get into those things. One quick mention of showing those CV numbers. If you go up to Tools and you go into Program Settings, if you haven't done this already, it's probably helpful if you go in and you click on Show CV Numbers. In the earlier versions of the software, this was not set as default. It is being set as default now going forward. It's very handy to have it. And basically what this does is exactly what you're seeing here. You can see that the CV numbers are listed next to the menu or the slider or checkbox that you're changing. So if you have a little bit of a DCC background and you know, oh, well, CV3s and CV4s, that's my momentum CVs. Here you can see that this is how we change those momentum CVs, and you can see that correlation between the two. So if your programmer doesn't already have those CV numbers shown, go into LokProgrammer Settings. You want General Settings, Show CV Numbers, and check on that box and save the changes. Now, if that was not up, once you save the changes, you have to close the program and then open it back up for those changes to apply. So just a helpful little hint there, and I'll probably show that again in another video just to kind of be specific about, did you know you could do this type of thing. So working down through allowed break sections, especially in Europe, they have some different types of doing some braking, and a lot of this is done with DC on the DCC track. It senses that and it puts the brakes on an engine. It has to do with signaling and blocks and things like that. So in the North American market, we don't see that too often, but if you are in the European market and you want to use that, or if you're in the North American market and you want to get into that, our decoders do have that capability. As we scroll down, we're going to see constant brake distance, reverse mode. This is a pretty important one. If you have an engine that you want to run in the opposite direction, North America, a lot of times, the older engines, especially in RS3 or GP7 or 9, a lot of times the long hood end was the forward end. But when manufacturers make locomotives and they put DCC in them, they don't always set them up that way. Sometimes, as most engines these days, the short hood or the short nose end is the front. That just becomes kind of standard. Railroads, the prototype railroads themselves changed it from one railroad to the next, even on the exact same engine. So if you do have a railroad that you want the long hood end to become your front, you can come into this box right here, this reverse mode. Again, those of you familiar with DCC, you'll see this is in CV29. Check that box, and now you've reversed the direction. So everything that was forward is now reverse, and vice versa. Again, you have your trimming menus. If you're using a power pack, you want to go in and set this power pack setting up. Usually, I set it up all the way. It's going to depend on the engine. The higher you have this set, the longer the charging time is going to be as well. So something to keep in mind when using power packs. When you're going from analog to digital, and sometimes you do run into this situation on different layouts, you want to make sure that you're not changing directions. So usually you want this preserve direction box checked. In analog mode, it's going to change the polarity on the rail. So if the polarity is different than DCC polarity, then it's going to notice that, and it may change your direction. If you have this box checked, as you cross into that, it's going to realize which direction the motor was spinning, and it'll continue in that direction. So that's why you have that checked. Starting delay. This is if you have and most ESU decoders by default have the starting delay turned on. So if you have that set, when it'll wait until your prime mover is already started before you allow it to move. Some decoders out there don't have that ability, so if you want to turn that off so that it starts moving as soon as you turn the throttle, no matter what state the sound is in, whether it's started or not, you can turn this off. This can be handy if you're going to be MUing with a decoder that's not an ESU decoder, maybe a non-sound ESU decoder if it's non-sound, it's always going to start as soon as you tell it to move. Now, if it's an ESU non-sound decoder, we have a virtual start delay. So we can even make a non-sound decoder work like it's a sound decoder with that start delay in there. The other thing that the start delay does is it allows the prime mover to rev up a little bit to build up some electricity to if you're under a heavy load, you're not going to start moving right away in prototype physics. You have a lot of weight that you got to get moving, so it's going to start a little bit slower as you get going. That start delay is also enabling the decoder to do that. Working down, this is your function mapping. This is where you set up each function button, your physical outputs, your logical outputs, the sounds. I'm going to do a video specifically on the function mapping, so I'm not going to get into all this stuff too much. Your function outputs, this is where you would set up what each output does. Now, an output and a function are two different things. The output is the light that you're outputting electricity to. A light, a fan, a smoke unit, anything that's controlled by the decoder is an output. Now, I'm not talking sounds. Sounds are sounds. Now, this is a physical electrical output that you want to turn on. There are other things called logical outputs, and we'll get into those logical functions. Dynamic brake, acceleration, switching mode. Those are logic functions that you're telling the decoder to act a certain way. These are physical outputs, so usually a light. You can have some delays as you're turning things on and off. After a period of time, you can have light automatically turn off. We use this for cab lights. We turn it on when we start up the engine, then after a few seconds it turns off automatically without us doing anything. Kind of automates things a little bit. You can dim those lights. And again, I'll get into these physical outputs with another video. Function settings. If you have flashing lights of any kind or blinking lights, you can set the frequency for that. If you have flashing ditch lights in the North American market, this is really common. Flashing ditch lights, if you press the horn, the ditch lights will flash automatically. This is that holding time. This is how long those ditch lights are going to flash after you've stopped pressing the horn. If you have any type of automatic coupling, this is where you would find this as well. User identification. This is an open CV that you can put whatever values you want. Sometimes you can use this for setting up your own database of locomotives, and you can put your own values into there to tell you something, whatever you want it to be, whatever you want to correlate that to. This is where you would put that information. We've left two CVs open. You can put any value in there you'd like. Manual CV input. Again, probably not something that most people are going to get into, but this will show you every CV that's set in the decoder, and you can get in and make adjustments there as you see fit. So motor settings, this is where you would set up your speed tables. You can use a 3-point curve like we do with most files. You have your lower speed, your top speed, and a mid-range speed, and if you bring things down, everything else will adjust with it. So keep that in mind on the 3-point curves. You also have an actual long speed curve that you can go in and adjust everything individually. Again, another video coming on exactly how all this works, so I'm not going to get into this in full depth. If you want to change your back EMF settings, your load control, that's also under your motor settings. Your pulse width modulation frequencies, that's all under here. If you're using a smoke unit, you can set that up in here as well. Your sound settings. Sound selection. If you're using a select decoder, we use CV48 to adjust the different horns, the different bells, the different prime movers. Here's where you find that adjustment for CV48. It's under the sound selection. The steam chuffs, if you have a steam engine, you can tell it to use an external sensor like a cam, or you can play the steam chuffs according to the speed, which is using the back EMF from the motor. The setting works really, really well. The back EMF, you can set it up with the chuff rates perfectly in most cases without having to have a cam. Cam is very precise. Back EMF, if the cam is 100%, the back EMF is 98%. It's usually very, very good. It almost eliminates the need for an external sensor or an external cam. If you're going to have articulation, you can set that stuff up in here. Random sounds, air pumps, injectors, air compressors for diesel, radiator fans, anything that you want to put in there, spitter valves, all that. You can change those random sounds here. Volume, master control. This is not individual sound slots volume. That's going to be down here in the sound slot settings. This is just the master control. CV63, this will bring all of your sound slots down equally on your master volume. If you use the logic function to fade your sound, which is we'll get into with the function mapping, this is where you adjust where it would fade to. Break sounds. This is your brake squeal. These are activated based on how your throttle movement is set, and this is where you would adjust that. Now getting into sound slot settings just below it, the sound slots, this is where each sound is held. Each of the individual sounds that you can control independently from one another, these are showing those slots. And from here, you can pick which one you want to adjust. Say we were looking at the air horn. Maybe we have the air horn too loud. We can adjust that higher or lower. We can make it so that at one speed it'll play at one pitch. Another speed we can play it at another pitch. Something else that's kind of interesting is if you're in your prime mover, say you've got two engines with exactly the same sound. You can come in here and you can slow one down just ever so slightly. Usually you want to make these the same. Then in the other engine, you speed them up just ever so slightly off center. You won't know a difference if you listen to it right off of the full speed, but compared from one to the other, you're going to go in and out of sync. So it'll really sound like you have two engines. They won't get into sync. They won't sound like it's the same engine, and you can actually hear the two different prime movers. Really handy little trick. If you're going excuse me, if you're going to play a sound that is needed only when the prime mover is on, that's what this button is for. When I set up the defaults for most of my sound files, I set this up so that if it's an air operated device and the prototype you don't need the prime mover to be on for, I make sure that this button is off. If it's a device that needs to be active only when the prime mover is on, say your air compressors, in the random sound air compressors, maybe your dynamic brake sounds, you only want that working when you're hearing the prime mover. You'll have that checked in those cases. So again, in my personal preferences and the way we set up our defaults, if it's an air operated device, if it doesn't need the prime mover to be on when you're operating it, then we don't check the box. If we need the prime mover to be on, then we check the box. So that's really what it comes down to. Special options. You want it to work under DCC protocols. This is a select decoder, so yes, we definitely want that. The select decoder is only DCC. If we get into the 4.0s and other things, which we will in just a quick second, this is a brief showing of what can be done, then there'll be other options here. The memory settings. These are the buttons that allow you to have a memory turned on so that when you power down and power back up the layout, these things are recorded. That'll remember the function buttons. This will remember the speed that you were running at. So if you have a loss of power on your layout or other things, these will remember those settings. As soon as you get your power back, it'll continue on. So that's where you find that. Now again, these are select files. This is the select version of the programmer if you're using a select file. If you were to open up a 4.0 file, you're going to see something a little bit different. Now this is a 4.0 decoder or a 4.0 sound file. We made a few changes. I'm not going to keep those changes. So as soon as I open that 4.0 file, and it'll show it right here that it is a 4.0, you're going to see that now we have a new window, and this is the sound window. So if you're using a 4.0 and you want to adjust those sounds, this is where you would get into it at. So we can get into each individual sound slot. Remember, we showed under decoder the sound slot settings, how you would adjust the volumes and maybe the speed of the sound slot. Well, here's actually how we get into the actual sound slot. Here's what the sound looks like for this particular sound of the prime mover. This happens to be a 16-cylinder 645E. I'm going to get into another video showing this a little bit more in depth. But if you want to adjust those sounds, either you do it under the sound menu. Again, you got a sound library over here. Same thing with this. This library can be updated. So when you do your check for the new version, if there's a new template pack, that'll come up and tell you as well. Along with 4.4.20, there was a new template pack release, which is 1.7. So you're going to want to check that. So guys, this has been a long video, so I don't want to bore you guys too much. I'm going to be going into each of these menus. We're going to get into how to adjust some of the prime mover sound slots, and the schedules. We'll do a bunch of other things. We'll show you how to make your own templates. We'll show you how to use the templates in the 4.0 stuff. So I'm not going to get into that here, but I hope that this was informative. If you have questions, please let us know. There are some other things that we didn't go over. Some of these icons up here. This is where you write the sound. This is where you write just the data. This is where you would read the decoder, save the decoder, open up another file, create a new project. Same things up here, different ways to get into them, read decoder, write decoder. Most of these are fairly self-explanatory. The sound menus are only open when you have a 4.0 and can adjust the sound. File, basically like everything else that you're working with. Whether you want to create a new project, open one, save, close, open recent things, show your wizard. That's what we started with here. You can have that come up or not. Again, there's other little things up here. As we create more videos, we're going to get into a lot of these in depth. So we'll explain them a lot more than what we have today. This was meant to be a quick video. It just turned into a kind of a long video, so I apologize for that. But I wanted to be somewhat thorough. We'll talk more as we go. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know. We'll help you as we go along. Hope you're having a great day. Enjoy.